we come, walk down the street.
Well, good morning, Blue Troopers, and yes, I did actually sleep in this t-shirt last night, but it's going in the laundry today. So, after our live stream last night, I want to thank everybody who made it, and I hope you guys had a great time. And I was thinking about unsuccessful and perhaps not so successful remarketings of kits. And one of them, I believe it was Paul in New Zealand, had just picked up one of those Fonzie dream machine things, which was a remarket of the Monkees Mobile. And I had joked that that thing is a dagger in my soul. As some of you guys may know, the Monkees Mobile, which is a Dean Jeffries build, is one of my, well, it's my favorite Hollywood car, just because when I was a kid, I actually remember seeing the Monkees as a little kid when it came on at prime time, but I primarily watched it in syndication on Saturday mornings. It would come on after the cartoons. And I just always loved GTOs. I just thought the car was super cool. But I know most people, their favorite Hollywood car is the Batmobile. So the idea behind the Monkees Mobile, of course, is that this band, which had no money, somehow had this super cool customized car, which even as a kid, I figured that just doesn't make any sense. But still love the car. My understanding is the big header on top and intake were all fake, but I remember seeing an interview with Mike Nesmith. He said the thing just drove like it was a terror to drive. It was a poor handling car with narrow front wheels and everything. It looked cool, but didn't drive worth the flip. And I know 3 of them have been made, and I think all 3 may have been made for the show. I'm sure one of you car movie historians could tell me on that, but I think they're all still 3 around in private hands. But then, of course, I believe it was MPC. He wanted to remarket the kit. So, 10 years later, Happy Days is a popular show, and they just chopped the canopy in half in a way that you couldn't drive with it if it was a real car, and they may have added a few bits and bobs and, sent it out as Fonzie's dream car, which, oh man, to me, that is probably the worst case of remarketing a kit model. But that got me wondering, and this is the question of the day, what do you consider to be the worst remarket of a kit? Now, there are some that were remarketing ideas that were pretty good and worked well. Some of the combo kits that companies would put together were taking existing stuff and making the diorama kits that used to come out. And there were attempts to remarket some tanks and subs and things with that little, was it Aurora had the little, I forget what they call it, Vista Vision, where they would actually put like a slide of the photo of an inside of a tank in a tank, and you could look down in the hatch and actually see the inside through a film slide. Those were interesting attempts to remarket. I don't know how successful they were, but I don't consider those bad remarket attempts. And I'm assuming that they were using existing models and they weren't entirely new models. So I may be wrong on that actually being a remarket. But some kits, and I'm not just talking about repops. I'm talking about when they actually take a kit and try to sell it as something else, a complete remarket. I'm sure all of you have your favorite one that you were disappointed in because it was just the same kit that you had before with some change to it. I think Mike Machat was talking about, I believe it was a Caravelle airliner he wanted as a kid that turned out just to be a remarket of a different kit. He was really disappointed. And I wonder what you consider to be the most, well, I don't want to say successful and unsuccessful because I have no idea what their sales numbers were, but just the worst attempt, not necessarily from a sales standpoint, from you're like, man, that's just wrong. That's just not right, that kind of thing. And for me personally, and don't get me wrong, if I came across one of the Fonz mobiles, I'd probably just build it as a Monkees Mobile. Leave the top down or leave it off or something, or engineer my own. It's not like, I never say no to styrene, so it's not like I would snub one, but it's probably going to be re-engineered. But what, in your opinion, is just the worst idea in remarketing that you saw? And I'm sure some of you guys already burned up the keyboards because there's some kit back there that was your pet peeve as a kid or whatever, maybe even as an adult. and again, we're not talking about just repops of the same kit, box art change or a few tweaks here and there. We're talking about when they're genuinely trying to sell it as an entirely different thing. Now, some remarket ideas were actually pretty good. For example, with Peerless Max and Max, they only had a few kits, so they remarketed. Now they were selling as the same thing, but they would change the combination around. Oh, you can just have the howitzer, or you can have the howitzer and the dragon wagon thing, or you can have the trailer and the dragon wagon. But they're just trying to make more kits out of the few existing molds that they had. That's sort of the same thing. That's kind of remarketing as something else. And I have no idea if the Army ever actually used the big tank recovery heavy tank motor carriage as to tow artillery pieces, or if that was just something Peerless Max made up, but just to try and resell the kit. But still, those are still being sold as what they were. I'm really thinking in the lines of trying to push an old kit off as something completely different. And one could argue that the Moonraker shuttle was just a shuttle with different decals, but that was a movie thing that was made specifically for a movie. And plus it would be a clever remarket because that was what they used. So, but I guess that would sort of count. We don't keep score around here. Just tell me what you think in the comment section below. And any other things about remarketing of kits that you found particularly exciting or not exciting or good or bad or whatever. I'm just kind of curious to the, okay, I'll give you an example. Just popped into my head was, do you guys remember when might have been Revell, took the PBY Catalina, and they, years later after it had done its production run, when Jacques Cousteau's television shows or his specials on television were popular, so they sold the Catalina, because he had a PBY for a while that, in fact, I think it may have had a mishap. But anyway, it was sold as the Jacques Cousteau's PBY. I guess that would count. I mean, they're not selling as a military, but they're still selling as a PBY Catalina, so that kind of falls in the middle ground of, well, it's kind of the same kit, but then again, they are trying to remarket it. It's still being sold as a Catalina, but as a completely different thing than what they'd sold before. They're not selling it with the bombs and everything, and the depth charges. They're trying to sell it as this airplane we've all seen on TV. So I guess something like that would sort of count, Okay, now I'm just rambling. Guys, take care of yourselves and model on.
Generation, this love and time. In this generation, we will make the world shine. We were born to love one another. This is something we all need. We were born to love one another. We must be what we're going to be. And the way it could be. Love is understanding. We gotta be free. We gotta be free. We gotta be free. We gotta be free.
5 minutes of research could save me from a lot of oopsies, but I never know what I'm going to say when I get here, so there you go.